We've talked about so much as as advocates, yeah. What's the realistic path if this gets challenged constitutionally or through regional or international human rights mechanisms? Do we even think it would be? Would you contribute?
Could you tell the question again? Sorry.
Okay. We've talked about how we can do so much more with this act, yeah? But what's the realistic path? If a group of civil society actors and organizations challenge it constitutionally or through other international mechanisms, what does that look like?
I think, realistically speaking, Uganda is a dualist country. So we tend to think that, or we tend to adopt human rights mechanisms only when it works for us. But when it's time for the actual accountability, for example, look at the UPR process. When it's time for the actual accountability, we don't usually get anything from what's happening. For example, when you look at these different clusters, sexual rights, sexual minorities, health, climate, and all of that in those reporting mechanisms, when they do the final national report, they usually put very little when it comes to, for example, sexual minorities. But then also generally, there's many organizations that have tried to explore, for example, working with international mechanisms. And it's helpful, but for a state like Uganda, not so much. For me right now, I feel like we need to wait. Because of the tide, right now, it's being conservative that is the thing. So I think people need to hold off on some of these things before we go to the courts, because, and that's just a personal opinion, when we go to the courts, sometimes they legislate decisions that are really final. They're final. I worry about, for example, the Anti-Homosexuality Act. Last time the Supreme Court said they were doing the hearing, and that made me extremely nervous. Yet we know the kind of outcome that we are going to get after that. So what does it actually mean when the Supreme Court decides against our rights at this point? Why not? I feel like in some of these cases we can actually wait. We'll wait out the season and then we go when we have a more favorable judiciary, for example, because time T, the judiciary will be more favorable.
Yes.
It's not going to remain conservative like this. I don't even think it's going to last a long time, because the world has seen how destructive it is. Because remember, there's a bigger picture. It's a trickle effect. We're going to eat the rich one day. And all of these things are going to do what? They're going to be overturned, you get. So I feel like the tide is going to change. And we need to use the court system, for example, when the tide is in our favor. But right now, I do not think it is, because all the gains that have even been made at this point have been lost. We saw in the beginning when they first litigated queer rights. The first case was Victor Mukasa versus AG. He won the case. The thing for right to privacy. We've seen when it came to the Rolling Stone publication thing, those guys also did what? Basically won the case because it was decided in their favor. We had AG and Njuko versus the Attorney General on the Equal Opportunities Commission. Still, that was decided in the favor of the community. So we realized that was a certain tide. It was a certain period. When you look, the cases start between Victor's was from 2006, I think, but it was decided in 2009. So 2009, 2010, 2011, and up to 2014 when we had the AHA decision. But in between there, we had the Kasha case. So with Kasha, it was decided in the negative. And then we've seen there was an appeal and all of this. And recently we had a decision from the what? From the Court of Appeal. Still, it was negative. Same thing with SMUG. Same thing with the Supreme, with the decision in the petition against the Anti-Homosexuality Act. While it may seem like we made some wins, we actually didn't make any wins. So I worry so much. What does that mean for us? The courts have been used as a place. We use them to secure our rights in a more, permanent way. But the courts are using them to strip our rights from us right now in a more permanent way. So I worry. If, for example, the Supreme Court says we are going to have the AHA completely, maybe I forgot my legal knowledge when it comes to that. Who are we going to appeal to at the end of the day? Even if we go to maybe, let's go to the international court, whatnot. At the end of the day, when Uganda says we are, a sovereign state. We are a sovereign state.
Yeah.
Is international law really? Is it law even?
Because the white man.
Thank you. But also, does the white man care for us right now?
Wait, are they not the ones doing this in the first place?
Thank you. They're the ones funding this, so
Yeah.
Oh, what can we do legally? Okay. I think what we can do as advocates. Sure, we need to first let it sit and simmer and see how they're going to further build on this act. But I think we should do some work. We need to advocate for some sort of clarity, for maybe regulations. We need to advocate for the government to give us regulations, because otherwise we're going to be living in fear. You know, this government, if they don't, sometimes they can just leave the act there. There'll be no following regulations, and you're going to be caught in that mess, in that uncertainty, and it will be ugly really fast. So I think the first thing we need to do is to hold the government accountable. You've given us this law that has so many overlapping powers, so many overlapping provisions with existing laws. We need regulations. Where do our regulations start? And once we know that, once we have the regulations in place, we can be able to analyze the patterns. We can be able to see we need to keep our eyes open so that we can actually analyze these patterns. We can see if they are if they are persecuting and actually charging people under the act, what activities are they mostly going under? Like, what are they targeting, and how do we then advise our clients? Because as advocates, then it's our duty to advise our clients on how they can safeguard against that. But our first duty is to pay attention, and we need to advocate for more regulations and more clarity. And at least civil society, like, we need to be maybe exempted or also excluded among the people getting funding, because we're doing work for the government that the government is actually obligated to do.
Yes.
That's it.
I love that. On that note, I feel very satisfied. But what stays with me with what our speakers have ended on, number one is wait for a favorable judiciary. It's inevitable. People change, government changes, guys. I know, difficult to believe, but government changes. And so even if it's that time, it will change. The tide keeps going. And another thing, we wait for clarity and hold the government accountable for regulations, because as a sovereign country, state, we for sure have to hold them accountable on the same principle that they're asking off of us. Because what does that mean? We've talked so much today about what it means for us when it comes to the role that social media played, that it works as a legislative tool for this Protection of Sovereignty Act, but also for all the work that we've done previously, which is admirable. That for the one tool that they tell us we can't use freely, it's the one tool that has brought so much voice. Yeah, it has brought, even for what is happening at the moment, it works rightfully and also against, but with the right tools, with the right resources, and with the right people, we're able to continue our advocacy in this way. Yeah. And also another thing is, as a message as we end, to organizers, that there's a lot of hope for us to hold on to, that we're still able to hold this podcast. Again, this podcast is a big plus, yeah? And Q Media's work that is very elaborative on showcasing the advocacy that has to happen, and this being sovereign voices for the Protection of Sovereignty Act. There is no other way to put it but that it has done such a good job to bring out advocates on this podcast to just share with us, so that we understand exactly what this act now looks like after the bill was amended and they adopted some of the sections. And so I hope everyone is able to come out from this, look back with your employees, and employers, pay NSSF, think about retirement plans for your community. Yes, Insurance, because while we talk about providing commodities, that's not always accessible. So we have to go back and think about that as well. Every aspect of sovereignty starts with the person, and because as the constitution says, we the people are sovereign, right? So you the people are sovereign. You're the only reason you have the ability to go and litigate. You're able to advocate. So thank you, our listeners, and thank you, our speakers. Thank you, Miss D. Thank you, Shady, for being here, for giving us all your time, all your wisdom, all the knowledge, all the sharing. And this has been Sovereign Voices, Feminist Protection, Resilience and Resistance from Q Media Advocacy. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
I wanted to add, we the people of Uganda are sovereign, and we have the power. The power belongs to the people.
There, put it there.